one call. Just a horrible, horrible situation for them.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Hello and welcome back to TakeaSide. I'm your host, Max McElroy. Be sure to follow along on our topics as well as post your own debates to climb that leaderboard and give yourself a chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card. And for all KU students, stay tuned for a special giveaway at the end of this episode. Today we have a little bit of a different show as we are discussing college conference realignments. The college landscape seems to be changing very fast as we've seen teams switch conferences and even more teams being rumored to go elsewhere. Let's start with the Big 12. This conference just recently accepted 4 new schools to be in their league, starting as soon as 2023. Houston, Cincinnati, UCF are all coming over from the American Athletic Conference, where BYU is coming in from an independent school. I'm joined for all debates today with Maya Peterson and Jack McGarr. Which of these programs will have the most success in their new conference? We'll start with you, Maya.
You know, it's going to be hard to pick a good school to join into the Big 12 or who's going to be the most competitive. But I wanted to go out on a limb. I'm just going to focus on the women's programs and say BYU. History has shown that in this last year, the BYU programs have exceeded expectations, starting with women's basketball, which, Jack, you know, that's my home. Mm-hmm. BYU was in the March Madness tournament, and they lost, I believe, in the second round against Arizona. But Arizona then became, you know, second place, I guess you could say, within the March Madness tournament. So to lose against this Arizona team is not that bad, and they only lost by 2 points. So I would love to see them battle against KU and Baylor and all these other schools within the Big 12 conference as of now. Volleyball as well, doing great. They just swept Utah, number 10, Utah, swept them this past weekend, so that can also be a great benefit for the volleyball programs within the Big 12. And of course, I mean, that's my answer, but Jack, you probably have a different answer instead of BYU.
I do. I'm focusing on like the men's basketball and the football side.
Okay.
I think Houston's going to have at least the most success of these 4 teams in the Big 12 because, number one, I mean, Houston, by all means, has had success in basketball to begin with. I mean, they fared very well in March Madness last year. They had championship aspirations last year. I think with the Big 12 getting tougher competition to start and, you know, playing those teams twice, such as Baylor, Texas Tech even, I mean, those teams will give them more experience going into March, which I think will help their basketball program. And as far as football goes, I mean, the Big 12 is not the powerhouse of football by any means.
Right.
So Houston will have a little bit of experience with these teams too, just playing these teams twice in a row and getting that experience to win a few more games and possibly get to a bowl game. Who knows?
Yeah, that's true because, like you said, Big 12 is not the center of college football. But BYU, on the other hand, they're making a couple of little splashes within football, especially last year with their quarterback coming in and kind of being a big force for their team. BYU could be maybe competition for the teams that will stay. I would love to see Baylor and BYU kind of go head-to-head, and who knows what will come out of these 4 teams starting, but what would you say is like the biggest concern you have with Houston joining?
My biggest concern really is just who stays in the Big 12. I don't really know if Houston or any of these teams really know their competition going into this. They're moving in knowing what teams are in it, but I think a lot of teams are considering moving out of the Big 12. Kansas and more, you know, are the examples there, but I think really my concern is just who will Houston play in the Big 12.
Interesting. I think my biggest concern with BYU joining, and other than what you just said, is probably like, how will this affect their recruiting class? I think that's the biggest concern, but it's also like an amazing thing because once you join the Big 12, then people are actually saying, okay, if I can't go to an actual KU or Baylor, BYU or Houston could be the next biggest thing to at least kind of make their way within it. But I know we're going to talk about what team should stay in the Big 12. Will Kansas even be in the Big 12? So, Max, what are your thoughts on the teams?
Well, I think that UCF is definitely a team to look out for. You know, they're one of the most popular schools in the entire country, and so I think that that's definitely a team that could actually make some noise in a couple years within the Big 12. But we are going to take a quick break, and we will see you right back here in a little bit. Welcome back. Kansas has been another name that has been thrown around as another school that could be on the move. For a while, there were even reports of KU already being accepted in the Big Ten. However, recently these talks and these rumors have quieted down a little bit. Jack, do you think KU will be on the move here soon? And if so, do you think the Big Ten is the place they will go?
I honestly don't think the Big Ten is where they'll go. I think the Big Ten offers a lot more competition than the Big 12 already has for Kansas right now. I think as far as basketball goes, which is their main focus or their biggest program, I think basketball in the Big 12, there's a lot of teams that you have to compete with, especially to go into the tournament. With the Big 12, I mean, you still have Baylor, you still have what was Texas, and what was Oklahoma. You have all those teams too, but with the Big Ten, you have even more teams that are actually in that tight-knit pack that are trying to go to the tournament. So I think really the Big Ten isn't a great place for Kansas to look to. I think really what they should look to is the AAC. That's the conference I think they should be going to.
Pick.
Just because the competition level isn't as rough as even the Big 12 is, but that's by far the Big Ten. I think the AAC offers a little bit more leeway as far as the level of competition that Kansas will have to face.
Okay, so I think that we should just stay in the Big 12. We just talked about two teams that we felt that, of course, they were already accepted into Big 12. I said BYU, you said Houston, and we were able to break down what aspect and things they can bring to the Big 12 to help, and they won't seem like outsiders. And I think that, KU doesn't have a lot to give right now, at least, outside of basketball. You take basketball out of the equation, what other sport can we truly give to any other conference that they'll say, hey, can't wait to play them this year, So for me, I'm like, hey, I think we should stay in the Big 12. I think that Kansas needs to focus on mastering the sports that we do have so that in 10 years or 15 years, there's actually more on the table to say, this is what we can bring to your conference and this is what we can hopefully help with recruiting and things like that. Like the Big 12 kind of is surrounded by KU in basketball. So if you take us out, what value then does the Big 12 even hold?
For sure.
So I'm going to say we should stay.
Yeah, I think, too, the big reason that Kansas is not in the Big Ten right now is because of their football program. I think the Big Ten is looking for a school that has both a good to great basketball program and a good to great football program because a lot of the Big Ten schools have that already. And I think if Kansas were to join that, I think they would lack already. I mean, they're already lacking in football, but I think they would hurt even more in the area of football. And I think, again, their basketball program, which is highly touted in every area, I think that'll take a hit too as far as because, I mean, the competition, whether you go from Iowa, Illinois, I mean, all those schools are really tough to compete against. I mean, playing them twice a year is going to be really tough for an already good basketball program.
Yeah, and then from the recruiting standpoint, if you have – let's see, KJ Adams decided to come to KU, and we're a Big 12 school. Imagine if we're a Big 10 school. As a recruit, if you were in any recruit's position from the basketball standpoint, and a lot of recruits right now are in between like a Baylor and KU. You take KU out of the Big 12 and put them in the Big 10 or the ACC, then you're like, do I want to go play in the Big 12 with Baylor, or do I want to go to the Big 10 with KU? Who would you choose? Be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I still would probably say Kansas because I think the basketball program for them is, again, so highly touted that if you're on the roster and you get minutes, I think you'll be looked at by about any scouting prospect. So I think I would still pick Kansas, but I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like the Big Ten and playing with Kansas there, if Kansas were to move to the Big Ten, would be really tough.
I agree. I think I don't know. I think if it was Big 12 versus Big 10 as a recruit, I would say go back to the Big 12 because the competition is still going to be elevated, especially with the new schools coming in. But it's really all up in the air. But we have some teams that are kind of moving out and packing up their bags. So Max, I know we're going to get to that next, but what is your opinion?
Well, I think that KU's best move would be to then stay move to the Big Ten rather. I think that the basketball program itself, I think it'll be highly touted. I think that is something that people want in their conference. I think it'll also be great for KU. We'll see what Coach Leipold can do there with the football program, and it seems like it's been rebuilding for forever now. But I think that KU will actually, the best move will be the Big Ten, and I think that that's actually where they're going to lean to. But we are actually going to wrap up this segment, and our last debate when we get back, we're going to be talking about Oklahoma and Texas, how they will fare in the SEC. and we'll be joined by, again, Jack and Maya, so we will be right back after the break.
For students searching for a way to stay active in an outdoorsy way, the City of Lawrence has bike trails running in every direction, and with the new bike share program, we can stay in shape as we tour the sights of our beautiful city. Clinton Lake is only a short 30-minute bike ride away from Daisy Hill and has the most incredible sunset location in all of Lawrence. Walking campus may give you the KU calves, but biking can give you the KU thighs. Bike Lawrence today.
Welcome back. For our final debate, Jack and Maya and I are going to talk about the expectations for Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC. This summer, Texas and Oklahoma both applied to join the Southeastern Conference, shocking plenty of fans and even other conferences in the United States. Over the past 6 years, Oklahoma has basically dominated the Big 12 in football with 6 straight conference titles and 4 total playoff appearances in that span. Texas, on the other hand, has had a very rough time finding lasting success over the last decade or so. But starting in 2025, they will both be a part of the SEC. Will Oklahoma and Texas find success in the SEC? Maya, what do you think?
Okay, let's go back to the women's basketball program. I think Texas is going to make a splash in the SEC. They're going to be going against South Carolina, who, of course, blew them out last year, 32-64 within the tournament. But good news, Texas did have the overall #1 pick in the WNBA, Charlie Collier. So that can really help in the SEC building from learning from South Carolina. LSU, as we know, Baylor's head coach, Kim Mulkey, then last year decided that she was going to step away from the Baylor program and join LSU. So seeing Texas versus LSU, a.k.a. Kim Mulkey, for myself is going to be super exciting to see those coaches battle against each other. And then, of course, I'm from Texas. So the Texas versus A&M rivalry is going to begin. And I'm excited to see what the girls are able to do during March Madness, during the season. It's just going to be a lot. What about you?
Again, I think going back to the men's basketball, football side, I mean, Max mentioned it, Oklahoma's been killing the Big 12 for the last couple of years now. And I think Oklahoma will take a hit in the SEC. I mean, when you have Alabama, LSU, I don't think Oklahoma will beat those teams out of conference titles. I don't think they'll beat them out in a lot of games, but I think Oklahoma will still be in that top tier spot in the SEC. Yeah. I mean, 3rd, 4th, 5th best team in the conference. I think Texas too. I mean, Texas has a good football program too. I think they'll still be contending with Oklahoma for some of those top spots, but I think Oklahoma will at least take a hit in regards to football because they won't be the #1 spot. They'll be a little bit under Alabama and LSU.
Look, Texas got beat by Arkansas, so I don't really know how they're going to fare within the SEC because Arkansas, within that SEC group, I'm not putting Arkansas in my top 3 or top 5. And for Texas to get beat by them, I was kind of like, are we ready for the SEC jump? But for basketball, I think, they'll fare very well. Max, what are your takes?
Well, I do agree with you. I think SEC for especially Texas women's basketball, I think is actually a great fit, and I think that works out really well. I don't know how much success Texas will have right away, being in the SEC for football-related reasons. And then even with new coach Chris Beard there, I don't know if that's going to be something that takes a lot of time. I really like him as a coach, think he's good, but we'll have to see on that. Oklahoma, I think is an awesome fit. I think that's something that actually makes a lot of sense, and I think Oklahoma will be able to have a good amount of success early on, and then I think the longer they're in this conference, the more they will actually succeed with it.
For sure.
That's interesting. Do you guys have a rivalry that you're already going to put out there once they join the SEC?
I like that Texas and Oklahoma stayed together. You still get that Red River Showdown, and it's that conference game, so they meet in football, and so it still has an impact. It's not just a non-conference game that they're playing. Love that that's still together. Like you said, Texas A&M and Texas is just going to be awesome. We're going to see it's going to be a battle for recruiting as well, and I think that'll be kind of interesting to watch it unfold over the years.
Yeah, I mean, Texas and Oklahoma is going to be a rivalry right when they start. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they fare again in the SEC, and I think once they move, I think the rivalry will be different just because they're in the SEC and they have, the more experienced teams, the better talented teams that they're playing against. So I think the rivalry will only get better when they're in the SEC.
I want to add in OU versus LSU could also be a big rivalry. They both, especially in football, they both have flashy players with a lot of confidence. I can see that kind of getting chippy after we just saw OU versus Nebraska. I'll be excited to see what LSU and OU does.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us. That is all the time we have for today. But before we go, we are actually doing a special giveaway for all KU students. All you have to do is follow us on Twitter at TakeaSideKU, download the Sided Debates app, and post a debate on Sided. And if you do this, you get a chance to win a free Sided hat. We have a couple of them, so we'll be sure to give out a couple winners and announce them at the end of this week. So be sure to follow us, download the app for that giveaway, and also you can climb the leaderboard outside of this and get a chance at some Amazon gift cards as well. So we appreciate you tuning in for today, and we look forward to being in the studio again soon. See you next week.
He again is probably the most athletic player on this team.
Why you would use that, especially when one call.
Just a horrible